Great. Good. Wow. Hello, I'm Joe Lewis. I want to welcome you to this session on critiquing sparring disciplines. Now, quite obviously, there's many different disciplines in the martial arts, and everybody spars differently. Some schools concentrate quite a bit on what we call kicking, some on punching, some people go light contact, some people go full contact, some people kick the leg, some people don't, some people do absolutely no sparring whatsoever. What I want us to concentrate on today is I'm going to try to teach you a simple formula which all schools can use to help you break down a sparring session and help give you a means of recourse to help you figure out at what point your session messed up or went bad so you can go back and correct the situation. I'm going to start off with a structure. I'm going to show you how to apply and approach an opponent, going in, executing your technique, how to keep him busy once you're on the inside, and then how to pull out and reload to set up your next attack. I want you to keep in mind that a person's fighting spirit is really important. And to be able to tap that fighting spirit, we need a means, we need some sort of a plan to help us go about attaining that, going about being able to tap it and putting the energy, putting the fireworks, putting that firepower behind your attacks and what have you. Now, the first thing I'm going to do to sort of break us into this is I'm just going to have two people spar. And as they're sparring, I want us to concentrate on one thing that's kind of simple. Now, watch how this is going to work. Now, my first two people I'll work with today will be one of my sparring partners, Mr. Ron Weaver, and Jim Irwin. All right? Ron on this side over here, Mr. Irwin over here. Now, the rest of the people in this session are going to be acting as a class, and I want you to run your classes pretty much the same way that I'm doing here now. Now, here's the formula. This is how I want you to work it. I want you to concentrate when you're sparring on just one aspect. I want you to try to figure out what is your opponent's advantage. Now, there are many types of advantages. Your person may be faster than you are. Speed is one of the most difficult things in the fight game to deal with. He might have a reach advantage over you. The person might be bigger than you are and stronger than you are. The person may be more aggressive than you are. Now, think of these different advantages. He might be a better kicker. He might be a better puncher. He may be a better outside fighter. Now think about that, outside fighter as contrast to what we call an inside fighter. Now the person may have better linear techniques that go in a straight line. He may have better circular techniques that go on a curved line. He may have a strong defense, a defense that you can't collapse. He may have more experience than you are. He may be very, very assertive, have quite a bit of certainty about the techniques that he's executing, have a tremendous amount of self-assurance. How do you confuse him? How would you frustrate him to be able to break that concentration span? So as the two of you are sparring, I'll let you spar for about 45 seconds to a minute. And then at the end of that session, I want you to catch your breath. As you're catching your breath, try to conceptualize, try to put into word form as easily as possible one, let's say, idea or one strong point that you think your opponent is giving you that gives you sort of a hard time. In other words, it might be speed, say speed. If it's a better kicker, say he's a better kicker. Each one of you take turns. Does that make sense, everybody? And then I'll have my other participants in the seminar today try to verify whether they agree with you, if they think that's the advantage or not. So the first thing is see if you can identify your opponent's advantage. And then at that point we'll take it to the next step, which will be figuring out how to very simply eliminate his advantage. All right, any questions? All right, watch what we're doing. I want you to move at maximum speed, be very assertive, try to beat the other man to the draw, just like point tournaments. All right, ready? Square off against each other, bow, gentlemen. All right, ready? Go for it. Let's see what happens. Now, gentlemen, stay loose. Notice you're starting to tighten up a little bit. Is everybody paying close attention to that? When you start to tighten up a little bit, you start telegraphing your initial move. Your opponent can see you coming. You're not using your full speed. You start tightening up a little bit. You're going to run out of gas. All right, stay loose. Let the weight of your punches, let the weight of your kicks do all the work for you. Don't put the effort behind it. All right, maximum speed. Go for it. Continue. All right, break. Back, square off against each other. Bow. All right, pause now for a second. First thing you want to do is catch your breath. Next thing you want to do now is start trying to put the word form. What was that one thing about that man that gave me a problem? Was it the speed? Was he a better kicker? Was he a better puncher? That it seemed to get hit more often on the inside than the outside? Try to find out where your defense was broken down, not necessarily what was working for you. All right, let's take it one person at a time. Now watch what's happening. The rest of my people will be stepping up here on the apron over here. All right, Ron, what do you think was the one thing that gave you a problem about Mr. Irwin? See if you can put it into one or two words here.
I'd say his blitz was catching me off balance a lot. I was having a lot of trouble working against the blitzer.
He was blitzing you. Now, would you interpret the blitzing as he was a better puncher than you are, or would you interpret the blitz as he was a pressure fighter?
Covering the distance as a pressure.
He was bridging the gap real well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it wasn't the kicks necessarily giving you a problem, but the hands giving you a problem at the end of a blitz.
Right.
Okay, so he's a good blitzer. Okay, how many people would agree with that? It seemed like Mr. Irwin's advantage was he seemed to be, took more of an advantage on the inside with his hands coming off the end of a blitz. Right?
Bridging the gap real well.
Bridging the gap well, okay? Aggressive. So let's try to cut it down to the one word. Was he bridging the gap well? Was he a better puncher? Was he faster? Or was he simply more aggressive? Okay, I would characterize it myself. I would say your advantage was I thought you were taking advantage on the inside, and you also were very aggressive. Now we got to break that down into two simple terms: aggressiveness and a better puncher. Which one can we tackle? Now watch. Here's how the formula works. Whenever you step in the ring to get ready to spar somebody, first thing you want to do is try to simply, three words, identify his advantage. Second step, and this is what all strategies are designed to help you do. Remember, the confidence you have in the execution is what's going to help you tap that inner fighting spirit. And that's that one thing a lot of schools don't teach. They don't teach a philosophy of fighting. They teach punching, they teach kicking, they teach combinations. But what do I mean when I say, do you have a philosophy for the way that you fight? Do you have a philosophy for the manner in which you fight? How are you going to tap that fighting spirit if you don't have a strategic philosophy? So today, let's try to work on a simple formula which will help you to tap that inner philosophy. And I'm not talking about killer instinct, because there's no such thing as killer instinct. All right, now watch. Today, I want you to concentrate on three simple, easy words. How do I best go about eliminating his advantage? Now, the problem you've got is he's a pressure fighter. He's very aggressive. You've got to figure out a way to take the momentum out of his attack. So the way you're going to eliminate his advantage is you need to take the momentum out of his attack. Now, before I get into dealing with showing you a drill which is going to help you try to take the momentum out of his attack, keep him on the outside so he can't get inside and work those blitzing hand techniques against you. Let's now go over to Mr. Irwin's side and let Mr. Irwin participate now in the same formula. The formula is, first step, let's see if we can identify. What would you say is Mr. Weaver's advantage?
Extreme fast forward leg.
He's a good kicker,
Right.
and he's fast.
Right.
Okay, now, if we figure out a way to smother his speed, it doesn't matter whether he's kicking with the front leg or rear leg. Right? So would you say it's more the speed, or he's a better kicker?
I would say speed.
Speed. Would everybody in class agree with that? Speed, speed, speed. Okay.
Speed.
So now, see, it's easy to work if you can first conceptualize it, identify what the advantage is. It's even easier then if you can cut it down to just one word. See, we're not saying, well, he's got a good lead leg kick there, you know, and he's really fast coming off the firing line. That's too much mumble jumble. Let's cut it down. So, speed. The man's faster than you are. What you've got to figure out is how to eliminate the man's advantage. How do you do that? You've got to figure out how to smother the man's speed. Now, I'm going to work with Mr. Irwin first here. Let's figure out the best way to smother Ron's speed up. Now, there's many ways of smothering a man's speed. Number one of my old favorite ways was I'd come out right off the bat and just lay into him with a real hard technique, like a side kick. Wham! I didn't care if I hit his arm, hit him on the hip socket. A lot of times I hit him down here in the quadricep just to sort of paralyze the man's leg. Just because one thing I wanted to establish, I want to let this sucker know, hey, you're in my office. I'm the boss. I'm going to dictate what's happening. In other words, you're already establishing being able to seize the offensive. So how do you smother a man's speed? First thing you want to just come out and hit him right off the bat, real hard. Now, I don't want to do that today, but I just want to fill you in on that one. Another way of smothering a man's speed is set an incredibly fast pace. Run him out of gas, because if a man starts breathing hard, I don't care who you are. When you can't breathe, you can't fight. When you can't breathe, you can't move fast. When you can't breathe, you're not thinking about being assertive. It slows the man down. It takes the momentum out of his attack. So you got to practice in your schools always setting a fast pace. That's one of the things I used to always do. If I'm sparring 5 rounds, that last round and a half, I just gradually start increasing the pace. I want to see if that sucker was in any kind of shape or not. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So that's another one. So let's do something easy today that'll help you smother a man's speed. One of the easy strategic ways of smothering a man's speed is don't let him get set. And part of not letting a man get set is don't let him get off first. Notice a lot of times, Mr. Irwin, and this is true now for those of you participating and watching this. If you're up against a man that's fast, and I know he's fast it's because he's my sparring partner, okay? And he's nice and quick. Don't let him fire first. You realize how many times did he hit you? Did he hit you when you were attacking him, or did he hit you when you let him beat you to the draw? Most of the time he was nailing you when he fired first, which means right off the bat, you were not taking the momentum out of his attack. You are not smothering his speed because you are allowing him to fire first. One of the main things you don't want to do against somebody quicker than yours, don't let them, remember this, beat you to the draw. In other words, you've got to get off first. Now, since you favor punching, he's got a good lead hand punch. One of the best ways to beat a man who's got a good forward hand strike, a man who's got a good jab, is out jabbing. You've got a good forward hand strike. Now, what I want you to concentrate on now is this. Now listen up, he's going to be listening to everything I'm telling you, but we're just going to work on something. First thing I want you to do is square up against me. I want you to fire a real fast forward hand strike right at my hand, real fast shot. Now watch, when he fires his forward hand strike, try to make sure your hand moves first. In other words, don't try to telegraph in any way like trying to lean or tighten up just before you squeeze the trigger. Make sure the hand goes first. All right, strictly speed, you're going for speed. Go. Good. Strictly speed again. Step in when you punch out. Step in when you punch. Right, this time I want you to double up. 1, 2. Step in the first shot. Step in on the second shot. Double up now, real fast. Boom, boom. Back reposition. Right, double up again. Boom. Good. Now, as soon as you finish that last shot, don't just stop. As soon as you finish that last shot, I want you to see how fast you can pull out. All right, in and out. Go. Double up. Right back out. Roll up. Right back out so he can't counter punch you or counter kick you. Now, here's what we're going to concentrate on. I'm going to work this in 2 stages. Stage number 1. I'm just going to allow you to fire one technique, and he knows exactly what's coming. I want you to do this. I want you to keep that forward hand strike in his face at all times. Now that's technically what you're going to be working on. Now to back that technique up, let's work on a game plan. The game plan will be this. And remember, the purpose of a game plan is to help you to eliminate his advantage. What is the advantage you want to eliminate? Speed. How are you going to do it? Smother his speed. How do you do that? How are you going to smother his speed? We're going to work on trying not to let Ron get set. Because if Ron is set, that's when Ron is dangerous. If a man is quicker than you are, has a speed advantage, or if he's bigger than you are, or if he's more aggressive. The worst thing in the world you can do is allow him to get set. So we're going to concentrate on not letting him get set. Now let me explain what I mean by not letting him get set and do a little non-setting drill. Square up against me, Ron. Now watch. I want you to get in position where you think you can tag me with a lead leg side kick. Just get positioned. All right, from about right there, he could just basically fold that leg and nail me with that lead leg side kick. Now watch. In other words, he's got 2 factors going for him with his position. He's within range to hit me, and he's also ready to squeeze the trigger. 2 words. He's on his mark, and he's also ready. That's what we mean when I say the man is now set. For him to be set, there's a point at which he gets set. And we refer to that point as his set point. Now this comes from my set points control seminar, which is tape number 1. Look at his front foot. Imagine there's a little circle right around that front foot. Anywhere in that little circle he places that foot, we refer to that as his set point. Now what I don't want to allow Ron to do, since he's quicker than I is, I don't want to allow him to get set. So I don't want him to reach that point at which he is now set, ready to squeeze the trigger. Because you've got fighters who are like this. They're set, they're out. They're set, they're out. Because their people looks like they're never set, they're always moving. But everybody has to set before they squeeze the trigger. So as soon as he hits that point, like on the downbeat, boom, he can fire the punch, boom, or he can fire the kick. You're going to try to prevent him from doing that. There's only two ways you can do that. One is you've got to beat him to the draw. And I'm going to allow you one technique in this next sparring session, the forward hand strike. You can mix the forward hand strike up. You can throw it downstairs, you can throw it upstairs, take downstairs, come upstairs with it. You can double up on it. Like, you don't have to just hit. Sometimes I'll pull the hand out of the way and go forward. Sometimes I'll block, sometimes I'll trap, sometimes I'll obstruct. There's a lot of ways you can use that forward hand strike. Just because the head's not there doesn't mean I can't hit something. So I want you to keep that forward hand strike in his face, in his face, in his face, in his face at all times. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you got to beat him to the draw. Be very assertive with that lead hand strike. Keep it in his face at all times. But there's one thing I want you to focus on when you're doing this. Don't look at the target. Keep the target in your eyes with your peripheral awareness, but with your peripheral awareness, keep your focal point. Aim your attention. Target your attention on the man's set point, so you know when he's set, when he's not. Now watch what I'm talking about. Back up there a little bit, Ron. A little bit more. All right, now watch. Square off of me and get set, ready to fire that lead leg kick. Now he's ready. In other words, now he's dangerous. If he's quicker than I am, I've already given him the advantage. I don't want to do that if I'm sparring. So what I've got to do, as soon as his position gets strong, I want to take a little half step back, put that little space cushion between us. Now he can't quite reach me with a kick. So if he fires the kick, he's going to hesitate before he fires it, or if he fires it, he's going to be out of range, and his timing and distance is going to be off. So what he's going to do is he's going to have to make a slight adjustment. He's going to choke up just a tad. As soon as he chokes up, I'm going to move back again. So every time he makes a change up, he gets set, I step back. So what I want to try to do is move in such a way, try to get set. Move in such a way, boom, I can tag him just before he reaches that set point. Does that make sense to everybody? So this is one way I can control the set point. Back up a little bit, Ron. So watch. As I am moving around, I'm going to be moving, trying not to let him get set, and just before he reaches set point, I'm going to try to beat him to the draw. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Now listen up. That is not an easy strategy to execute. It makes simple mental sense. Of course, all strategies should be nothing other than common sense, but it's very difficult to execute. But at least it points you in the right direction. Without that mental discipline, it's difficult for your techniques to execute with the kind of assertiveness that I want. All right, you ready? You've got one technique. Your objective, keep that hand in his face. So do not do this, folks. Listen up. Do not just come out set, wait for him. As soon as you back to, I want that hand in his face, right off the bat. Now, there's a couple little things I don't want. I don't want you lunging. Because you lunge, a counter fighter will eat you alive. Does that make sense? Make sure you've got the right distance. If you're not set, you move, make sure you keep him from getting set. So there's going to be a lot of lateral motion here. All right, you ready? Get your mindset clear now. Beat him to the draw. Keep him busy. You got two ways to keep him busy. You're either going to be moving your body or you keep that hand in his face. Does that make sense? Sure. All right, ready? Let's see what happens. Go for it. Let's see what happens. Back in position. Keep going. Let's see what happens. Wait on him, Ron. Don't wait on him. Keep going. Back, reposition, back. You're starting to tighten up a little bit, Jim. Keep going. Keep going. Don't wait, don't wait. Wait. Stop, stop. See what happened when you waited? Pause for a second. Now, relax a second. Notice, by not letting him get set, and notice, by beating him to the draw, it took quite a bit of the assertiveness out of his attack. What typically happens when you go out and seize the offensive like that, and you take the momentum out of the man's attack by not allowing him to get set? Was Ron bringing the fight to you, or were you taking the fight to him? What up?
Taking the fight to him.
Was Ron backing up, or were you backing up that time?
He was backing up.
He was backing up. Notice, 9 out of 10 fighters can't fight that well when you back them up. Does that make sense, everybody? So what's happening by not allowing him to get set is you're seizing the offensive, you're putting him into a defensive mode, you're taking the balance out of his attack, you're destabilizing his concentration. See what's happening? It's a whole chain of reactions. And what's happening to his kick? He got a kick in there, but it wasn't as fast as he was before. It wasn't as assertive as it was before. Does that make sense, everybody? So, one of the easiest ways, if you're dealing with somebody who is quicker than you are, is strategically. Think about this. You must figure out how to eliminate his advantage. If it's speed, you got to smother the man's speed. How do you smother the man's speed? Well, strategically, we only did one thing. On a technique level, on a technical level, I just allowed you one technique, just a forehand strike. Now, once you see that the strategy's working, you know it's not the technique because I only gave you one technique. You have no choice. Well, you could do the same thing with the lead leg. You could do the same thing with the rear hand. Just don't let the man get set. Now, of course, the difficult part was he was sitting over here listening to everything I was telling you. So he knew what was coming and had the opportunity anyway to be able to adjust and be able to deal with you. Now, I want to reverse something here for a second. Switch places, please. His advantage was what? Very aggressive, good inside fighter. In other words, it's not his kicking that you're worried about, it's his blitzing skills with his hands.
Yes, sir.
So if you're up against a blitzer, do you prefer to fight a blitzer at this range, or would you prefer to fight a blitzer at this range? Which way? You prefer the outside zone. So in other words, if you're dealing with a good blitzer, if you're dealing with a good pressure fighter like Mr. Irwin over here, who's very fast at bridging that gap, what you want to do is, similarly, something that what I just told him to do against you is, you don't want to let him get set. In other words, a blitzer has to get set. He has to get that right distance before he can come in there with that blitz. So what you want to try to do, Ron, is keep him on the outside. Stick your lead leg up here for a second, please. A good puncher, you want to keep on this side of your foot. Don't let him get inside your foot. Now, of course, a good puncher, you want to keep him in the trap. You want to hit him between the foot and the knee. See that little zone in there? We call that the trap. This is where you want to keep him, right inside there. But if you allow him to get inside your foot, there's a good chance he'll zip right inside your knee. Once he's inside the knee, the puncher, the blitzer now has the advantage. So, against a good blitzer, what you want to try to master is what we call controlling the proper distance. You want to keep him on the outside. There's a little tendency on your part now, Ron, and this is true with 99% of all black belts out there. They all have a slight tendency to do this. At the end of the execution of a kick, they pause. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Square up against me, Jim. Now watch. I'm not going to hit you, so don't move. Now watch. Right at the end of the kick, you step up there, you fire the kick, and you stop. See where I'm pausing? Now, am I on his sparring line at this point, yes or no? Yes, I am. So in other words, I could get hit. So at the end of each kick, there's only two things you can do to keep this man busy so he cannot count you, or so he cannot get off first, or so that you can destabilize his attack and take that momentum out of his attack and prevent him, deter him from firing that blitz at you first anyway. Now watch. At the end of that kick, there's only two things you can do. As soon as you finish the kick, you can fire again. You can fire again with a punch. Or at the end of that kick, you pull out. So you can either move or fire. If you're not moving, if you're not firing, it's a good chance you're going to get hit. I see a lot of people in class situations that come in and go, pow, 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 stop. Look where my head is. My hands are way down here in my pocket. My head's right up there where I'm going to get hit. So at the end of that kick, you want the head moving so he can't get you with that blitz. He can't get you that forehand strike. Or if the head's not moving, at least you want your hands up there. It's preferably that you hit, hands up, and the head's moving at the same time. Or, in addition to that, at the end of the kick, hands are up, head's moving, and you're following through with something else at the end of it. In other words, don't pause at the end of that kick. Now square off against me. Now just watch this, Mr. Irwin. Now watch. I want you to step in and fire real fast. Lead leg side kick. At the end of that side kick, you shuffle back a quick half step. All right, fire, real fast. Quick half step back. All right, again, fire. Quick half step back. All right, as soon as you finish that side kick, I'm going to try to step in there and tag you with a forward hand strike like that. Got me? So, if you finish the kick, stick the leg up here. If you finish the kick, and you don't move at the end of that kick, what's going to happen? I'm going to end up actually appearing to follow your kick back in, although there's no such thing, and I'll be able to tag. But watch, if you take that quick half step back, take a quick half step back. If you're back there, I'm going to miss you. And if I miss, look at where I'm at. I'm in the perfect place for you to end up getting me with a counter kick. All right, position gets me. Let's see if you can fire the kick, take a quick half step back, and prevent me from countering. Go. One more. Keep going. Real good. This time, as soon as you take the half step back, if you see me punching, fire a counter kick from there. Go. Fire. Good. Back reposition. Let's try. Fire the kick. Fire. Good. A little pause. I want you guys back to pause. Don't pause away from me. Sometimes it's one of the golden rules. It's called when in doubt, stick and move. A lot of times you start to get winded. Don't catch your breath. Just keep sticking the punch in there. A lot of times you get the wind knocked. What do you do? Just keep firing the punch, firing the kick, and keep moving. It's one of the best golden rules in the fight game. And part of that is what we refer to in the strategic world as a contingency plan, a contingency strategy. Later in this tape, I'll be talking about what I mean by breaking down a strategy into a defensive and offensive game plan. But let's just work on this formula first. Now, square off against each other. You know what your objective is. I want you to smother his speed. You've got one objective. Keep that forward hand strike in his face. Don't let him get set. All right. I don't want you punching this time. I want you to first master being able to maintain the proper distance. I want you to keep him on the outside of your foot. Do not let him get inside your foot. Once he's inside your foot, he gets inside your knee, you're dead. As soon as you finish that kick, right at the end of that kick, I want you to either follow through with another kick, or pull out. If he starts to come towards you real fast, I want you to take a quick half step back, putting that space cushion between you so you're properly maintaining the distance, then keep him honest with the counter kick. If he comes towards you again, don't keep going straight back. Please remember that, folks. Do not continue to move straight back. As I keep moving straight back, he's already put pressure momentum on me. All I'm doing is simply increasing the momentum in his attack. It's one of the biggest habits point fighters have. Moving straight back, moving straight back. You've got to learn to circle. All right, we ready, gentlemen? Square off against each other. All right, your objective is, you're working on this formula. You figured out his advantage. His advantage is, he's fast. You've got to be able to smother his speed, especially with those kicks. His advantage is, he's a pressure fighter. Against a pressure fighter who's bridging the gap well, you want to take the momentum out of his attack. One way of doing that is to maintain that proper distance. Are you gentlemen ready? Square off. This is an academic sparring session. Now go for it. This is what happens. Stop. Oh, right where you are. Notice, Ron, that's twice in a row. You just finished your second kick right then. What happened at the end of that kick? You didn't move. See where you're at? You're right in the puncher ring. Back up again. Let me go back and re-illustrate that. Stick your knee back out here. Boom. You threw a kick a while ago, the first kick, you pull it back, you didn't move. You didn't follow through the second kick. He saw that. And if he didn't see it, his coach sitting over there in his corner, he will see it. So whenever you fight somebody, you fight two people. You're fighting him and you're fighting his corner man. Because his corner man's going to be sitting over there and he says, hey, come here, Jim. Guess what? He's firing that kick, and in the kick, he's pausing. That's the best time to nail it. So keep that in mind. He might miss it, but the other guy won't. So now watch. After you fire that second kick, you stop. He registered. He goes, saw this pause, saw a little pause. A little pause like that, a little gap in your offense means there's a break in your defense. Then you moved over here a little bit, Ron. Then you fire that second kick. Then that second kick, you stop. And here it was, right in your face. And you ducked. You see what I mean? Got to maintain that distance. One of the key words in all fighting, folks, and I don't know of a single game plan that we can use without it. It's a simple word, movement. Movement, folks, is the key to all fighting. With that simple word, movement, I can show you how to beat any man in the fight game. To control a man's set point, you've got to know how to move. To take that momentum out of the man's attack, keep him off balance, you got to be able to move. To outdistance a man who has a reach advantage over you, you've got to know how to move. To draw a man into a trap, lure him into a trap, what we call an entrapment strategy, you've got to know how to move. To beat a good puncher by keeping him on the outside, you got to know how to move. For you to smother his speed, get on the inside of those kicks, you got to know how to move. Does that make sense, all right? So whenever you're having a problem with a fighter, another one of the golden rules in fighting is, if you're having a problem, remember the key word is movement. How can I incorporate movement to fill in a gap? Because the gap means somewhere during your attack in that structure that I'm going to be showing you in a second, there's a breakdown. All right, let's try it one more time. Keep him outside. Go for it. Stop. Are you letting him fire first, Mr. Irwin? Huh? How many times did you let him fire first there? About 4 or 5 times. Good counting. All right, let's break here for a second. Square up against each other. All right, bow out. I want you two gentlemen to bow. Now remember how we critique the sparring session. This formula will work for any man in any style, whether it's full contact, Muay Thai, kickboxing, shoot boxing, point fighting, semi-contact, or what have you. Now, what I want to do next is let you two gentlemen step over and take a break, please. Jim Grady, Miss Larry Campbell, square up here. Next, what I want to do now is, now that we have a general idea as to what this formula is that will help us critique a sparring session, we need more information as to what is the whole structure of sparring all about. So I know how to take the formula and insert it at the right point, because whenever you get hit, whenever your punches and your kicks don't work for you, it's always because there's a breakdown in one word, your structure. Now on the tape called How to Spar, I talked about 7 or 8 steps which set up the initiation of your offense. Now what I want to do now is show you the remainder of the steps and talk a little bit about them. All right, now watch this, Mrs. Campbell. Square up against me, Jim. Fighting stance. When you're fighting somebody, one of the most important things you want to remember when you step in the ring to get ready to fight is get focused. Be focused. Most people don't teach focusing. And I talked once before about what I mean by focusing. Basically, you look in a certain direction. And as you look in that direction, try to isolate your attention, target your attention on one aspect about this opponent. Normally, I like to watch the man's shoulders and his hips. That gives me a general idea when he's going to execute a punch or a kick. But as I'm doing that, I contrast it and I relate it to the background, because there's always background behind this man. And I can tell when he starts to move that shoulder, move that hip, that gives me an idea when he's going to make his initial move. And as he's making that initial move, I'm concentrating on one thing. I'm watching the man's set point, because before he can cock that shoulder, cock that hip to execute a punch or a kick or a combination, what's he got to do first? He's got to get set. So, one of the things I focus on when I'm watching my opponent is I want to make sure he doesn't get set. I'm always watching the man's set point, because basically all strategies come off something having to do with controlling a man's set point. So watch these steps. First step when you step in the ring, get focused. Put your eye on your opponent and make sure one thing. Fighting is a defensive game plan, which means don't get hit. If you're not watching your opponent, but rather you're thinking about what you're going to do to him, what you're going to try to establish against him, how you're going to try to set him up, then you're not paying attention. When you're not paying attention, you will get hit. So the first step is get focused. Then when you step in the ring, before you get positioned, part of having a strong position is, of course, having a good distance, good defensive posture, and being able to move fast in any direction. But another part of a strong position is what we call attitude. Make sure you have a good, strong attitude. Part of getting that attitude, folks, is be physically prepared. Have good technique, execution. But what we're talking about here today, teach your students and teach yourself how to maintain not only a good philosophy of sparring, a philosophic strategy, but also teach yourself a simple game plan. Now, we worked on 2 game plans a second ago. Worked on one called Controlling Distance, worked on another one called Controlling a Man's Set Point. Now, as I am getting position, The next step in fighting is attitude. Make sure you have a strong attitude. Part of having a good, strong mental attitude is being convinced that your game plan works. The best way to find out if it works or not, first you got to have knowledge of it. But secondly, you need the experience. You need to practice it. Without that knowledge and without that experience, folks, you can't make headway. You can't tap that fighting spirit. You can't put that assertiveness behind your techniques. In other words, when you're sparring, you won't have what we call a sense of certainty. Does that make sense, everybody? What does a strategy give me? It gives me a sense of certainty of what I'm doing. It gets me mentally grounded. Does that make sense? I become centered. I know this is going to work. And he can see that from within me. Now, so we want the game plan. Plus, technically, what does a game plan do for us? Technically, what does a strategy do for us? It teaches us how to very simply eliminate his advantage. So there's two things I'm doing when I'm out here sparring. I want to take my strong points and I want to exploit them. Like I was showing Ron Weaver a second ago how to exploit his speed. Then I was showing Mr. Jim Irwin how to exploit his assertiveness with that blitz, keeping that forehand strike in his face at all times, not letting Ron get sacked. So we need the game plan. It puts energy, it puts enthusiasm, it gives us the incentive, which provides us with the motivation to go out there and execute. A lot of people don't execute because they lack motivation. They lack the motivation because they have no incentives. What's going to give you that incentive? A good game plan that you're convinced it works. So teachers, please, not only teach your people how to punch and kick and execute combinations, teach them mental disciplines. The art of strategically conquering your opponent. Once the strategy's into play, then you bring your techniques into play. Then once your technique starts working, then you put your body behind it. Use your body as a support system. Your body's the last thing you throw into the fight. You always use that for the trench fighting. All right, now, first step, get focused. Second step, work on that mental attitude. And the part of it we're concentrating on today is part of the attitude. What's going to give you that attitude is having a good game plan which you're convinced it works. Next step in sparring, folks. And when you're critiquing a sparring session, look for these steps. Look at your student. Is his attitude off? Is he not properly focused? Is he lacking a game plan? Does he not believe in his game plan? Maybe he's apprehensive about something. Maybe he's afraid of looking bad. Maybe he's afraid of losing. Maybe he's afraid of not ever being able to win. Now, third step is having a strong position. I talked about the positioning and the tape where I taught you how to spar. Now, as I'm positioning, what I want to now concentrate on is a fourth step. A fourth step is I want to make sure I set the man up before I squeeze the trigger to come off the fire line. A lot of people just set and fire, set and fire. They don't ever set the opponent up. If you're fighting somebody who's got an advantage over you, you've got to set the man up. If he's got a reach advantage over me, if he's more aggressive than I am, if he's more experienced than I am, and in particular, if he's faster than I am, you got to set the fast man up. You can't hit a tall guy from out here. He can hit you. You can't hit a fast man from way out here, but he can hit you. You've got to choke up on him before you can nail him. How do you do that? You've got to set him up. So we need these skills on how to set somebody up. We did a whole seminar tape on setups. I think it was tape number 6. Now, so before I squeeze the trigger, step number 4, I want to make sure I set the man up before I take off. Next step, step 5, concentrate on looking at your students to see if they're squeezing the trigger properly. Do they have the right distance? Are their legs, rather, feet and legs or what have you, properly positioned to get the proper explosive leverage so when they squeeze the trigger, not only are they deceptive when they come off the fire line because they set the opponent up, but they're also explosive. Look for those two ingredients. Speed, explosiveness, and deceptiveness. Because a lot of students don't have that simply because they don't work on it. They don't emphasize it. Scrub gets me. Next step. I've got focused. I've got the right attitude. I've got proper position. I've set my opponent up. I've worked on a good explosive initial move, which both Ron and Jim had a while ago. And now you want to work on being able to bridge that gap, the approach to your opponent. And keep in mind, you look at a student, he's not bridging the gap properly. He's getting hit coming in. What is wrong? It's not that he needs to work on bridging the gap. It's something went down in the structure of your strategy prior to that. In other words, he didn't come off the firing line properly. In other words, he didn't set the man up before he squeezed the trigger to come off the firing line. In other words, he wasn't properly positioned before he tried to set the man up. Or his attitude was off before he got positioned, or he's not even properly focused. So we need this structure. I keep talking about this structure to have that means of recourse to go back and pinpoint exactly what went wrong at what point. Then the final part of the attack, folks, is the actual application or the execution of the technique on the inside, whether it be a kick or a punch or a takedown or come on, what have you. Then, of course, on the inside, we work on keeping the man busy. So different types of movement, different types of punches, blocks, come along, take holds, elbows, what have you. Some stuff, Jim and I like to work, and the guy's throwing a punch, work those elbows right up in those armpits. Woo, they hate that stuff. All right, get in here, bring your knees inside here, hook them in here, step on the legs. Some of those Muay Thai techniques like elbows coming straight down the face. A lot of people don't like that stuff. But all of this is what we call execution and application of technique. Now, folks, we finished the penetration part of the attack. Now we've got to move, go back out on a different angle which we came in, pull out, regroup, and reload. A lot of people never regroup properly. And they forget, hey, when you go back out, I've got to reload. When I say reload, what do I mean by reload? That doesn't mean change your technique. That means reload that spirit. Reload, what's the intent behind my technique? I'm not just throwing a pretty technique. I'm not just throwing a fast technique. But I got a message behind that technique. Like I said in the tape on how to spar. When you fire that technique, boom, put your heart into it. Don't care about speed, don't care about power. I can smother your speed. I can keep you off balance so you can't use that power against me. But if you got that inner courage, you got that spirit, you got that heart, that's hard to take that away from an opponent. So now listen up. That is the structure that we're using, this formula, to teach us how to critique somebody's sparring session. So remember, folks, we've got two steps here. We've got a formula, how to critique, how to go about eliminating somebody's advantage, and we've got a structure to work with. Now, what I want to do next is let you two gentlemen try a session here for a bit. Square off against each other, please. Now watch the formula work. You're going to spar for a second or two, about 45 seconds. Then I'll say break, step back. I want each one of you to try to tell me in one word or two words what you think the other man's advantage was. Got a better idea? Now, as you're watching these two spar, watch the breakdown of the structure. So not only try to sit there and identify what you think the other man's advantage is, see if you can pinpoint at what area he broke down, all right? So get your good attitude going, get focused, think about some kind of a game plan, energize your techniques. Ready? All right, go for it. Let's do it now. Sheer speed, sheer speed. Back reposition. Explode now. Swirl. Go. Slow down. Right. Catch your breath. Now, instructors out there, those of you watching the tape, think about it. What was Mr. Grain's advantage? What was Mr. Campbell's advantage? You get your name correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, briefly, try to tell me what you think his advantage was.
Good timing. And his punches. Good straight punch and good speed.
We're writing a book, Jim?
Okay.
Okay.
Main thing, he's pretty fast.
It's fast.
Good lead, good rear hand.
Good follow through.
Yeah. Good straight punch.
Now, to take it a step further, what would be one weakness you saw in him?
Weakness would be a
One
lack
word.
of movement.
Which
mobility.
caused him to lose maintaining a strong
Defense.
defense. Everybody got that? You got hit a lot.
Sir.
And the reason you got hit, you would come in, Watch his instructions. You would come in, you fire, and he'd stop. See? You let the head go side to side, and then all of a sudden you freeze. Now when you freeze, you want your hands up. Or when you freeze, you want to keep him busy, keep him off balance at all times. All right, shift over here real fast. What was the advantage you felt this man had?
Liked his legs. Good reach.
He'd tag you, where did he hit you most? Out here with kicks or in here with punches?
Punches.
He got you with punches on the inside?
Sir.
No, he got you with punches in here. Why? Because you stopped.
Because I paused.
You paused. You got me? Does that make sense, everybody? So whenever you're trying to break somebody down, try to identify first what's the man's advantage. Then start looking at it defensively and offensively. In other words, when you're setting up a game plan, it's not only that you're trying to think about what you're going to do offensively to keep him off balance or to nail him, but you also want to think about your defensive game plan. Set up your defensive game plan first. So remember this. When you step in the ring, your defensive game plan comes first. Set up your defensive game plan first. And that's what you should do. Maintain a good defensive game plan so you're not getting hit. Then start setting him up to work your offensive strategies. Does that make sense? So once you're able to make him miss those kicks, for example, if I were fighting Jim Grady, square up against me. Now watch this, Mr. Gamble. Out of here, he's got some good kicks. Hook and heel kick, axe kick, lead leg side kick, lead leg round kick. So I'm going to stay outside of his foot or just inside his knee. So I'm going to be moving in and out like that quite a bit. But instead of staying straight in the front of this man's line of fire, I'm going to be circling him quite a bit. You played him a little bit too much in his what we call line of fire. So I'm going to keep deviating, going side to side out of his line of fire. Does that make sense how that would work?
Yes, sir.
And what we would do is we would create a strategy as to how to outdistance him, how to eliminate his kicking advantage. Got me? And then we would work on that. Now, what I want to do now is, Jim, you stay out here. Let me, Stephen, come out here and take Mr. Campbell's place. All right, square off against each other, please. Now we've got two different types. Right off the bat, we see a reach advantage on this side. We're also noticing an advantage of experience. Here we've got a green belt, over here we've got a black belt. So there's obvious advantages right off the bat. He's going to try to compensate. We'll just spar for a few seconds. When I say break, let's see if you can identify what is the other man's advantage. Think about some of the things we've been working on so far. Don't just go out there and start ad-libbing. Well, I'll throw some punches, see what happens. Well, I'll throw some kicks and see what happens. Well, that's not working. Let me try something else. Stick to your game plan. Be assertive. Without that game plan, there's no sense of certainty. Without that sense of certainty, folks, you can't tap that fighting spirit. There's no way to do it. Square up against each other. All right, concentrate on your speed. Now, make sure, Jim, you don't mess up and look over and say, oh, I got a green belt, I'll take it easy. Got me? And don't look over and get apprehensive because he's got a black belt on. He's a man, and you're a man. Period. You got it?
I've never looked before.
Go for it. Relax, Stephen. A little tight, Stephen. Stay relaxed. Hands up, hands up. Stay relaxed. You wait, Stephen. See what happens when you wait? All right, great, great. Looking good, looking good. Back out here. Pause for a second. Real fast, let's try this formula one last time. Stephen.
Powerful.
He's strong.
Very.
He's big, strong, powerful. In other words, a big man wants you to sit still. You ever watch a big man work a heavy bag? They just, like, they club it to death. They don't move. You ever watch a little guy, he's always moving.
Sir.
Little guys are asleep. They sit in the gym like this and they watch those big guys. Go, God, man, I don't want to get hit by him. Oh, wow, look how big those guys. Oh, look how big his arms are. And big guys, they just sit around, who can I spar today? Yeah. Who can I beat up today? You know what I mean? The little guys sitting around there, they want to spar, but they don't want to get hurt. See? And they're looking for the hole to hide in. They're thinking, okay, I know he's going to hit hard, but gee, I don't want to get hit. What can I do to make sure I don't get hit? See, they're thinking analytically, you know. The big guys are, who can I hit today? Who can I hit? See, they're not figuring out, well, the little guy's going to be doing all this and doing all that. They're not thinking in advance. You're afraid of somebody, you got to think long range. Don't look at him and go, whoa. But look at him, look beyond the size. Okay, he's big. I don't want to get hit with that big body. The easy way not to get hit with a big body, don't stand straight in front of him. Don't get in his line of fire and don't get within range. Now, what you want to do against a bigger man, a more powerful man, is take the momentum out of his attack so he can't use that size and strength against you. Does everybody see how the formula is starting to work? First, we identify the advantage. Next, we want to figure out how to eliminate his advantage. We need a game plan. Okay. You move fast. You're very aggressive. You've got good technique. Got me? There's one little gap in the structure. At the end of your kicks, you're pausing. Number one. Number two, there's a little tendency, because I know you're a doctor, you think a lot. You analyze the situation before you participate in the situation. Make sense what I'm saying? And what's happening to your opponent? What's your opponent doing when you're sitting there trying to figure him out? Well, let's see, he's bigger than I am now. Let's see, if I went in there with his kick, now if I missed the kick, da-da-da. See, when you start contemplating, when you start calculating, what's he going to do? He can see you're not impulsive. When that impulsiveness is not there, the assertiveness dissipates, the confusion sets in, so you get kind of a diffused focus, and it'll beat you to the draw. Got me?
Yes, sir.
So number one, you got to make sure that the easiest way to take the momentum out of a big man's attack is don't let him get set. Right back to the thing we worked on in the beginning. You're allowing him to get set, and if you watch this tape, you'll notice about 2 out of 3 times you also allowed him to fire first. And when you allowed him to fire first, you got to ask your question, were you in his line of fire, or were you just out of his line of fire? Were you within range, were you just a little out of range? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So by keeping just a little out of range, see, make him lunge. See, now for Jim to hit me, see, he's got the lunge. See, he's got the lunge. See, when he lunges, boom, you counter. So you want to pull the big man off balance. You want to keep the big man off balance by saying just a little out of range, letting him fire first, and all of a sudden you beat him to the draw. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Now, that's just one thing you can work on. Okay, now, starting to wind these things down. There are many drills that you can create to help you translate the formula into not only words, which are how to eliminate his advantage. And once you eliminate his advantage, you translate that into, well, I got to smother speed, I got to keep him off balance, I got to draw him into a trap, what have you. You've got to translate those techniques into something other than concept. You got to convert those into the drills, like the drills I've been showing you gentlemen how to work on today. Remember the golden rules we worked on. A lot of times what I'll do in a class situation, I'll line up the class over here and class over there, and I'll tell these people, hey, I want you folks to blitz this side, and then I'll let them spar for about a minute, and I'll ask these people, can you tell what this side over here is doing? And then I'll reverse it. Then I'll let this side off. I'll tell everybody on this side, hey, turn your back, and I'll tell this side of the class to do something else. And flip-flop back and forth. Teach your students, teach yourself this formula. Remember the structure that I went over. Keep in mind, we need a strategic philosophy. Most fighters don't have a philosophy. When you're out there fighting, make sure you want to try to tap that fighting spirit. Have a purpose. Have a sense of purpose, and that sense of purpose helps you tap that inner fighting spirit. When I was in Okinawa, we had one simple philosophy: never quit. Didn't matter how tough you were, how tough you weren't. Didn't matter whether you got hurt or not. Never quit. You can't beat somebody that won't quit. Now play this tape back several times and practice this formula. Practice it, practice it, practice it. It makes sparring more of an intellectual science. It helps you put the energy and the fuel behind your techniques, behind the execution of your techniques, so you'll be more assertive. So you'll be able to go out there, look at your opponent, identify what's his advantage, and very simply strip him of it. There's no other way of fighting. I want to thank you folks for being with us today. Take care.